I remember when I made my very first budget. I had one of these happy planners. I used one of those budgeting inserts. I used all the pretty stickers and different colored pens. I made my budget look like a work of art. On paper, I had all these goals of where I wanted my money to go. But the truth is, my system was completely flawed. So today I'm going to talk about the 7 budgeting mistakes that I made when I first started out budgeting, so you don't have to learn the hard way. So back to my very first planner budget. Like I said, it was all about goals. I had these goals of how much I was going to spend on grocery. I had these goals on how much I was going to spend on things like gas. I had savings goals. And you know what? I never hit those goals. Those goals will go by, be unreached, and then I would be frustrated with budgeting. The problem was I never actually took the time to track my spending to see what I was actually spending, to see that I was actually spending about $800 on grocery, and my goal was to only spend $500 on groceries. I never took the time to see exactly what was going out of the door. So when I made these aspirational goals, of course I was going to miss them. I was spending way more than I could have imagined. So what I learned after many blown budgets is that your budget should reflect your actual life, not your ideal life. If you're just now getting started with budgeting, tracking your spending is the first actual start of creating a real budget that will work for you. And as I went on to make these goals and my budgets, I would forget things like irregular expenses that will pop up. I would act like birthday, holidays, and the Amazon Prime renewal was one big surprise, but they weren't. They came every year. And the things that were actual surprise, like a blown tire or a car repair, I never even considered those, and they were never included into my budget. Not planning for irregular expenses wrecked my budget every time. So now I'm starting things like using sinking funds and planning for things that arise like holiday spending, emergencies, and car repair. Having these sinking funds makes sure that I'm never caught unprepared, and I don't have to spend a ton of money out of my regular paychecks to cover these irregular expenses. And speaking of being caught off guard, when those times happen and my budget was blown, I would internalize me being bad at budgeting. I just thought, man, budgeting just isn't for me. And I would give up after 1 or 2 bad months. But I like to think of budgets as projections of how you spend your money. And projections are not always going to come into fruition. So yes, your budget might be off 1 month. You might have way more expenses than you could have imagined, but that doesn't mean you should just give up. And speaking of giving up, I would treat my budget like a fad diet. I would give up just as soon as I got tired of feeling so restricted. Back then, I wouldn't budget in any fun. I listened to the advice of how avocado toast is keeping people poor, or how you should never buy coffee outside of the house because you'll never become a millionaire if you're spending money on coffee. I would restrict myself from nails. I would restrict myself from other personal care items like going to get my hair done or buying new makeup. I wouldn't even budget in date night. And then when I got tired of feeling so restricted, I would go on a binge spree. It would be Amazon galore, Shein, Fashion Nova galore. I would go on a crazy spending because I felt so tired of being restricted. So if you were ever wondering what happens after something like a no spend month or a no spend year, it's the same thing that happens if you decide to starve yourself as a way of losing weight. You binge. So just remember, a budget without fun money is a budget that does not last. A little bit of fun sprinkled in here and there will not completely ruin your financial future. Another mistake that I made when it came to budgeting was I never checked in. I would write down what these aspirational goals were, and I wouldn't even think about them until the next month came. I write it and I forget it. And then I wonder why I was broke mid-month. So now I do weekly budget check-ins with my husband involved, of course. Sometimes daily, because small adjustments to your budget would keep you from making big mistakes. Another mistake that I made was I would only budget for the big bills. I would not include things like school activities that would happen throughout the month for my kids. I only thought about the big things like my house, my car, and my utilities. I didn't budget for snacks. I just was out here only focused on the big things. Remember, the small stuff matters, like keeping up with your subscriptions. A lesson that I learned, the small things matter just as much as the big things. Another mistake that I done was counting my eggs before they hatch. I would spend money that I hadn't got yet in my head. Like when it was time for annual bonus, or if I was possibly getting a tax refund, I had already planned on spending that money on going on a trip or treating myself to a shopping spree. And there's nothing wrong with treating yourself, but I could have made a lot more headway in setting up my future self by including those things in my budget. I missed out on making real progress. Instead of using those windfalls for things like paying off debt or boosting my savings, I just spent them before I had even received them. They were gone before they even reached my bank account. What I learned since then is that extra money can really go a long way in setting you up for success. Now when I have extra money coming in, I plan to use it for my broader financial goals. For the longest time, I treated savings, debt payoff, and investing as an afterthought. I thought to myself, let me pay my bills, do a little bit of spending, and then whatever's left, I'll throw it towards savings and debt. But spoiler alert, there was never anything left in my bank account. And as far as investing, I always pushed off things like starting a 401k or a Roth IRA, which I still don't have set up, for a later date. And I've lost valuable years of investing by treating it as an afterthought. Looking back at it, now I realize that way of thinking kept me stuck, because those three things are what actually sets you up for building wealth. Savings protects you from emergencies. Having no debt gives you breathing room, and investing sets you up for the future. Now I treat them like non-negotiable bills in my budget. I invest first in my employer-sponsored 401k. I list out how much I want to put towards debt first, and then savings for emergencies second, and then I pay my bills, and whatever is left over is used as a buffer in my budget. So those are the 7 mistakes that I made when first starting out budgeting, and I'm glad I made them, because going through and making those mistakes are what finally got me to the place where I can make a budget that actually works for me. So if any of these things resonate with you, drop a comment. And if you have made any other budgeting mistakes, if you're a seasoned budgeter, also put it in the comments for everyone else to see what not to do. And of course, if you have not subscribed yet, make sure you do that. Hit the like button and turn on your bell notifications. Until next time, bye.